Hello YouTubers, I'm here today to talk to you about the evolution of the Thinkpad X Series line. So I'm in the fortunate position of having quite a number of ThinkPads, and they're all X Series, so why not take the opportunity to do a little comparison video. And this isn't a video talking about specs and functionality, because these are all pretty old except for the one on the end there, but there are loads of YouTube videos talking about that. We're not really interested in any of that stuff. Yeah, that's boring stuff. Let's talk about the evolution of the ThinkPad design, which I think is more interesting for a lot of people. There are a lot of people that collect some of these old ThinkPads, people that just want the latest stuff, people that really want MacBooks but buy ThinkPads, and vice versa. But what we're looking at today is the evolution of the ThinkPad line. Some people do not appreciate the new style ThinkPad. Some people prefer the old ThinkPad line. I like the old ThinkPad line, but I also like the new one too. I'm not really too sure which one's better. People hate the new chiclet keyboard. Some people like the old keyboard. Some people like the new keyboard. But what we're looking at is the design. So let's have a look. Let's get straight into it. So on the right hand side here we got the X200S. So before that there was an X61, and before that there was an X60. Right about here is when Lenovo really started taking control, and they created the X200. Then the next one we have is the X201, and then we have the X220, and then we have the X230, and then we have the X250. Yep, I know there should be an X240 there, but I got rid of that because of the touchpad. So this is an X250, but the X240 and X250, they're the same. Yeah, they're the same. Okay, so let's first take a look at the keyboards, because people get really upset about this keyboard situation. So you can see here that the keyboard bezel is razor thin on the X200 and on the X201. See that? Razor thin. Moving across to the X220, the bezel has got bigger. See that? The bezel has increased in size. Then we get across to the X230. Bezel still the same size as the X220, and then the X240 and 50, the bezel got a lot bigger. So looking at the palm rests, you can see the palm rest design here on the X200 is broadly the same all the way across to the 201, 230, and changes when we get to the 240 and 250s. There's some design changes in the 230 which we'll talk about, but broadly the same. Now, one of the things that did change, just underneath the cursor keys, you can see 3 circular dots. Now that circular situation is so that you can find your cursor keys without having to look at them. So there's one up next to the left arrow, right arrow, the down arrow. So you can find those arrow keys. I don't know, maybe you're in an Excel sheet, maybe you're doing something else. You can find the arrow key without having to look down and see that with your eyes. You can find it with your fingers, and you can do that on the X201 and on the X220, but on the X230 you can't do that. See, they got rid of it. So you can find where the arrow keys are, but you can't necessarily find the middle arrow key. And on the X240 and 50, they just did away with the whole thing. So I don't know, maybe they thought it wasn't useful. Maybe people thought it looked ugly. No idea, but it's gone. Now let's look at the controls at the top there. So you can see this is the original keyboard with the additional row at the top that everybody loves. Now this additional row at the top, you can see it starts with the escape key, some volume controls up there, Think Vantage button, which I don't know, is that useful? I don't know. Power, print screen, scroll lock, pause, insert, blah blah blah. Yeah, and you can see also you got the blue enter key. Yeah. Now on the 201, same. Yeah, it's the same. On the 220 now, changed a little bit. So do you see? Can you spot the difference? So firstly, the escape key seems to have grown. Yeah, and they moved the F1, the function keys across, so that you can see that they already started trying to make the 220 or the X series more interesting. By the time they got to the X220, they changed the design. So the function keys to move across to the right. The Think Vantage button is I don't know, got more fancy. The volume controls have got a bit more fancy. The power key has definitely gotten more fancy. So this is clearly an evolution, and it looks a lot better. Yeah, I think it looks a lot better. The print screen, those are still the same. The enter and delete key now, they've moved these around. Now, I don't know if they needed to move them around. I don't see what benefit it brings. Maybe they got some guy to do typing and they found out that it was better, but you know, it worked for people and it'd been working for a long time. There was no need to make that change. I don't think so anyway. So let's look across. Now, this is the 230, and you can see that they completely changed everything. Yeah, this is the chiclet keyboard, so the key style has changed, but more importantly, this top row is being completely reformatted. Yeah, it's completely gone. They kept the volume controls, and they kept the Think Vantage button, but all these print screen and scroll lock and all the rest of it, that is all gone. Yeah, so this is a significant redesign here, and a lot of functionality had been combined, and some of it has disappeared, and maybe they're saying that it wasn't needed. Interesting. And then we get to the X240 and X250, and it's all they did really was take away the volume controls and move the power key to the right hand side, but otherwise the keyboard is very similar to an X230. So the X250, 60, 70 and 40 are pretty similar to the X230. You can see that keyboard design is very similar. And there is the old keyboard. Okay, so looking at the touchpad and TrackPoint in that situation, you can see that you got the three buttons there, and you can see the design where it kind of got a lot of angles going on, and it's got that little dip around it, and it's got the blue dots right in the middle one, so your fingers can find the middle one. Yeah, and then here in the 201 they kept it the same. Yeah, they added a touchpad, and you could get a touchpad in the X200, I think, but there's definitely one in the 201. Yeah, so they added a touchpad and two buttons below. Now moving across to the X220, you can see they already started meddling, and they got rid of those two bottom buttons, so they figured that those weren't needed, and made the touchpad bigger and made the buttons for the TrackPoint slightly wider. See that? Wider TrackPoint buttons. And And then with the X230, the virtual buttons that were at the bottom of the TrackPoint on the X220, see those two virtual buttons? Those are gone. And you see the little curvature that was there so that your fingers could adapt to those TrackPoint buttons. Those are gone as well. But they kept the they kept the blue dots. Yeah, I also think that those TrackPoint buttons are just slightly wider, yeah. And then moving across to the 40s and 50s, you can see the touchpad is a lot bigger. You can also see the keyboard has moved up quite a bit, yeah. So these laptops are all aligned. Yeah, as you can see, they're all aligned, yeah. Each one is lined up perfectly. When we compare the X240 in the keyboard, you can see it's a bit different. First, you can see it's sticking out somewhat. Can you see that? The reason why it sticks out is because the screen hinge design is different from the others. Yeah, we'll come to that. So let me just level that back up. Right, that's level. Now you can see that guy definitely sits behind the others. You can see that gap there, yeah? But that doesn't mean the unit is that much longer. So here you can see the keyboard on the X240 onwards is definitely set back quite a bit from the others. That is to accommodate that large trackpad. The TrackPoint is also very different on the 230 compared to the 240 onwards. You can see the 240 TrackPoint buttons are a lot wider. So people saying that the TrackPoint buttons are completely wrong in the 250. That's a mistake, yeah, because those are very similar to the 230. I mean, they're very different to the trackpad buttons that were on the 220 and onwards. I personally like the 220 TrackPoint buttons the best, but each to their own. Now the 240 had no buttons, if you remember. That's why it was a terrible laptop. But the buttons came back in the 250. But the TrackPoint does not go to the edge of the machine. That might be a good thing. I have another 230 and the very edge is broken off because it's extremely thin. Whereas this one is not so thin. I mean, I didn't break it. I don't know how you could break something like that, but it's just less robust. You can see with these guys all closed, they're all pretty much carrying the same type of footprint. They all have their batteries removed. You can see some guys are a little bit thicker in places. You can see the gaps there, yeah. So you can see the 200 is sitting just below the 201 with the battery removed. The 220 is sitting significantly below the 201 with the battery removed. The 220 and a 230, similar thickness with the battery removed. Now that is significant, yeah. So the 240 and 250 a lot thinner than the others. Now with this hinge situation, you can see the hinge on the 240 onwards goes behind the machine, and what that does is that extends the footprint of the machine, which I don't know, is that a big deal? Don't know. Let's compare it to 230. But what that actually does is make the machine shorter. You see that? Machine shorter. But consequently the machine is also longer. Now they did that on purpose so that they could keep the dimensions of the machine roughly the same, but have a much larger track point. Yeah, so this whole space at the top here is dedicated to the hinge mechanism, whereas on the X230 and all the older machines, the hinge situation is taking up a lot of the case. You see that? There's got to be what, half an inch there dedicated for the hinge mechanism, whereas in here the hinge is actually sitting behind the machine. So that's very clever, I think, and a good design choice. It's not taking anything away from the machine. You know, the machine's shorter. They could have actually made the machine a lot shorter than it is if they got rid of some of these big bezels, but they didn't. Okay, looking at the screen heights of the machines here, you can see they're all very similar. The X200 is sitting shorter than the X201. The X201 is sitting a bit taller than the X220. And the X220 is sitting around about the same size as the X230. And then from 230 onwards, you can see screens are significantly shorter, but because of that design choice with the hinge, the machine sits further back. Yes, you can see the fronts lined up here, but the machine is sitting further back. See that? Okay, some other design choices is the hinge mechanism. Now this locking hinge, I'm not sure if it served a great purpose. It's supposed to stop the device from opening up in your bag or open up accidentally. Perhaps it serves no purpose, you know. However, it does make the device more secure. But as a consequence, you have to have these locking mechanisms at the front there. Yeah, and 201 had the same thing, locking mechanisms. Now from the 220 onwards, they scrapped that. Now I personally didn't think that locking mechanism thing was of much use. I liked it, and I like machines with it, but I do have to concede that it wasn't of much use. Yeah. Another thing that's of interest is each machine has a slight curve at the top of the screen. You see that? So the 200 has a curve, the 201 has a curve, the 220 has a curve, the 230 has a curve, and the 250 has got a very slight curve, but you can't even really see it. So they all had fairly aggressive curves in the screen. I mean, this guy, the 201, I mean, that's nearly like a whole right angle of a curve on the screen there. Okay, let's have a look at the indicator lights. So you can see the 200 has a whole range of lights: Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, wireless LAN, num lock, caps lock, battery, charging, sleep. No specific lights on the keyboard here, but lots of indicators let you know what's happening, and then quite a few on the back too. Sleep, charge, power. Coming across to the 201, very similar to the 200. Yeah, most of the lights are there. I think there's a Bluetooth light missing from this one, but perhaps it didn't have Bluetooth. Again, many indicator lights on the back too, so you know exactly what's happening. And on the 200, or 220, sorry, looks like we've lost a lot of lights. We've just got Wi-Fi and hard disk. However, we did get a caps lock light on the keyboard, which was really good, but the numlock light disappeared. Now, I guess that's not a big deal. I mean, not many people set numlock on a keyboard on a laptop and just press these number keys here. I mean, they're not really in a great order anyway, but the caps lock light is a good call. Let's see what's going on right in the back. So in the back here, we've lost some lights. We've just got sleep and power, whereas before we had sleep, power, and charge. Let's try the 230. Let's see what's going on here. So 230 is very similar, just Wi-Fi and disk, but we don't have a caps lock light. Back is similar. Okay, now this is a 250, and it was the same for the 240, but you can see there's a situation here. All the lights have all gone, so we don't know. There's no Wi-Fi, there's no disk, there's no caps lock light, no numlock light, definitely no light for Bluetooth. On the back, nothing, no lights. Now, they did do a little light in the eye to try and let you know when the machine was awake and when it was sleeping, which is good, and that's intelligent design. But I still think that we need a caps lock light here. I think that's a mistake. Yeah, this redesign was the first machine, well, besides the 230, not to have any caps lock light. Yeah, and it didn't have a disk light yet, and I agree with lots of people, it does need a disk light. It needs a caps lock light, it needs a disk light. Bluetooth light would be a bonus. I don't see why we can't do that on the side of the machine, perhaps. A disk light on the side, or Bluetooth light on the side, or even a Wi-Fi light on the side. Maybe turn it off in the BIOS if you want to. I think it's good to have that. And one thing I should point out is, in terms of the indicator lights, which I've been talking about for a little while, is that even though the 200 had a specific light for power, and the 220 and the 201, 220 onwards, the power light or the power symbol was contained within the power button itself. So they took it away from the screen and put it in the power button. And we also had additional lights for mute and microphone mute, which was great. But in the 240 onwards, the microphone mute was still there, and the speaker mute was there, and also the power button light was still there. And they just got rid of the disk light. I mean, it's a shame that they combined the function key to change the volume and the microphone. I mean, they could have easily created another rope there and squeezed those buttons on, or move some of these keys down a little bit, make the touchpad a bit shorter, or move the touchpad right to the edge. or even move the the volume controls down the side here. Plenty of space. Yeah, I could easily say mute, volume up, volume down. Plenty of space. And if they really wanted to treat us, they could move the brightness controls to that side too. So there's plenty of things that they can do to keep this system usable and to bring it to the same level of functionality as the X201 and X200, which a lot of people, rightly so, say had the best keyboard layout compared to this one, which is very minimalist. Yeah, but as I pointed out, they have tried to integrate some of the things into some of the buttons. Yeah, they've integrated things into the design, which is good. Just needs a bit more work. So these full voltage CPUs, what difference does it make, right? Well, if these are all supposed to be extreme portability, we can use full voltage as long as it's not going to affect the overall rationale for the X series, which is it to be extremely portable. However, we can see that these CPU choices and these choices on ports, choices on power, have affected the portability of the X series. So you can see that the X200 and the X60 and X61 before it, you can go on another YouTube video and find those, but you can see that those are even smaller, even more portable than the X200. Now, as the power increased, you can see that these guys got bigger, bulkier, thicker. Yeah, so this X230, you can get bigger batteries for it that stick out the back. It's got a load of ports on the sides. Some people got these with 16 gigabyte of RAM, big SSDs, i7 CPUs. That is a portable workstation, and that's cool, but that's not what the X series is supposed to stand for. And the X series is supposed to be extreme portability. Having a bulky 12.5-inch thick workstation is great. Yeah, I would buy one, great. But that is not necessarily what everyone wants when they're talking about an extremely portable laptop. Yeah, so you can see that they did get bigger and bulkier, yeah, and they lost their way somewhat from the original design. Now, that's not to say that the X240 and X250 is perfect. Of course not. I've already pointed out where there have been compromises with the keyboard design, with the lack of power, volume switches, rows missing from the keyboard, little design cues around the cursor keys and the touchpad and TrackPoint. But overall, the question is the new redesign of the X240 and X250 that bad? That's the question. Or did the X200 through to the X230 lose their way from being ultra portable to being small workstations? So maybe these should have actually been the P series. Maybe this should have been the P200. Maybe that should have been a P201 and the P230. Who knows? But maybe I don't think that they should have been in the X series. Yeah, they were getting too big, too powerful, using up way too much battery. And I have these with all different power cells running on them, and they, compared to a modern laptop or ultra portable, they don't last very long at all, if I'm honest with you. I mean, I don't hate these devices, or else I wouldn't have them. Yeah, I like them all. But I have to be honest that the X200 and the X201 and 220, 230, the battery life on them sucks compared to a 240 and 250. Yeah, it's useless. And in 2017, if you was to give one of these devices to somebody and say, right, here you go for the day, and they would go away, they would say, where's the charger? Yeah, with the 240, 250, 260, you don't maybe need the charger. You might need to think about, do I need to bring the charger? Like I went away the other day on the plane, and if I took the 201 or the 200, I'm taking the charger, you know. I'm picking up the charger before I pick up the laptop. With the 240 and the 250 and the 260, the question is, do I need to bring the charger? And I don't think I'm at the point yet where I will just get on the plane without the charger. I'll take the charger just in case. But like with my, I don't know, like an Apple Watch or something, you don't need to bring the charger. It's charged. That's it. But with these guys, you need the charger. That is not portable. So the question is, what happens next? You know, in the 270, in the 280, maybe we'll get to a point where there will be very portable, but at a cost. Yeah, it will never return back to this. It will never return to that. The X230, X220, that was a special situation, yeah, where people had lost their way designing portable workstations instead of extreme ultra portables. Yeah, so maybe in the X280, X290, whatever comes next after that, they will get thinner, lighter, more portable, yeah, and they will have just enough power and just enough ports to do what people need to do, you know, which is not CAD and not have, you know, rendering massive computer games and things like that. That's not what this line is supposed to be. However, that does raise the question, do we need a P12? Do we need a 12-inch workstation? Personally, I think we do, because people like the X220 and the X230 and the X201. People love these things. So we do need, you know, I think people would buy a 12-inch workstation from Lenovo. But then at the same time, people shouldn't get confused about what the X line was supposed to be and what the X240, 250, 260 and 70 onwards, what they represent. I think what they represent is a return to a focus on extreme portability rather than extreme power in a portable size. That pretty much concludes my video on the X Series line. I know it's been pretty long, but there's a lot to talk about here, and there's a lot of upset people who are upset with Lenovo for changing the design. People saying that the X240 and 250 onwards, they should return to the classic ThinkPad design. I mean, there's some things that I miss, like the latches on the screen. I don't think that would affect the portability of the device, make it a bit more robust perhaps. I don't see any reason why they can't put the keyboard back as it was, or offer a keyboard option for people. That's not going to affect the portability, I don't think. But I do agree that the device, you know, it was getting too thick, probably getting too powerful and consuming way too much battery life. You know, these guys on the left, the X240 and 50s, most of the device is battery with a computer attached, whereas, you know, with these guys it's a computer with a battery attached, and it's literally a different focus. Yeah. So let me know what you think in the comments, and let me know if you want to know any more information about these particular devices, or whether you want me to review something else. That's it. I'm out.